Previously, in part 1 of this video series, going to the Island of Iona, Jeff and myself left Tinault and set up base camp in Loch Buie in the island of Mull. We had a decent weather window for 3 days only, so planned on spending day 2 circumnavigating in Iona and returning to base camp before heading for home on the 3rd day. It was a lovely calm but heavily overcast morning when we arose, but surprisingly few midges about. It didn't take long to jump their boats and we were off, heading out the mouth of Loch Buie, then west along the south coast of Mull. Low cloud clung to the cliff tops, making for a very atmospheric seascape. Looking east, it looked like rain, but the odd patch of blue sky brightened the western views. Rounding Malcolm's Point, we were pleased to find the Atlantic swells were gentle rolls, as they can often be hard going if there's a strong winds well offshore. The Carsick Arches, which are my favourite landmark on Mull's rocky coastline, were illuminated splendidly by a shaft of sun shining through the grey clouds. Just round the corner, the waterfall at S. Crerachan was disappointingly dull, but I still couldn't resist going into the rocky amphitheatre for a closer look. It was in full fettle, falling over 200 feet down the vertical cliffs, with all the rain we have had over the summer. I decided to let the drone capture the splendour of this watery scene, but found the swell landing on a small back beach a bit much for landing, so decided to launch and hand recover the drone from the boat. Life is one long learning curve, and this was my first time both launching and recovering from a floating boat, and it was nearly game over for drone number 2 when I discovered it had a mind of its own. Everything started off well. The controller said OK to take off, then said home point updated, which meant that it had locked onto GPS. So I eased it into the air. Immediately it started to drift sideways, with no sideways input from myself. Then it seemed to stop gaining height when it reached around 20 metres high. It then started to respond to my control inputs again, but by this time I was confused by its erratic flight and worried I could lose control. Fortunately, it started to behave as normal except for the odd glitch, so I continued with the flight. I wondered if wind was causing the problems, except there was no wind. And although I continued the flight, I felt I had no other option, as I was dreading trying to catch it in the confines of my small boat if it started drifting sideways again. So in truth it was a quick flight to capture the waterfall, and I didn't enjoy the moment, as I was afraid of losing control of the drone, so quickly landed again. As I feared, hand-catching the drone wasn't easy. 3 attempts were aborted at the last moment, as I saw the drone starting to drift sideways of its own accord from my outstretched hand. Luckily, in the 4th attempt it didn't drift, although I made a frantic grab for it and was lucky it didn't slip out my hand into the sea. You can see my fingers in the video, and they got a whack from the propellers, but fortunately they were not revving fast, so no damage was done. For info, the controller records all control inputs, and when I reviewed the flight later, I discovered the screen mentioned several times, "No GPS signal, fly with caution." I guess the high horseshoe cliffs disrupted the GPS signals. Lessons learned, and lucky I still have a drone. As you can well imagine, adrenaline was still flying through my brain as we crossed Ardalanish Bay to the start of the Ross of Mull. The island of Colonsay lay low and grey in the horizon. The coastline now takes on a completely different appearance. The high cliffs are left behind and replaced by low, rolling hills and rocky pink granite outcrops. Wonderful white sand beaches are often hidden in the rocky inlets, and as it was now coffee time, we turned in to admire one while having our morning break. It's just a pity the sun wasn't shining, as the water then turns a lovely turquoise blue. But this day it reflected the grey clouds as I launched the drone.
We have liftoff.
Donny, you are the man. Play your song when you can. Some will groan and some will moan. Don't let it bother you, as it's best to be true to yourself. And there will always be someone who wants to spoil the view of your land below.
Land below.
Sadly, it's just the way social media can be. So keep your drone flying high and free. And remind them it's not compulsory to watch your video, which is totally free. And it is about your view, not their view, of the land below.
Land below.
So if they don't like it, tell them to hike it. But be sure to thank those that enjoy it, as they realize you are a harmless old guy, only having some fun, on his way to the land below.
Land below. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below.
Flight over, we continued on our way, and if I thought we had travelled far to get here, a shot from Cree West in America had travelled even further. Just a pity there was no sun to show how lovely this area really is. We were now at the start of the Ross of Mull rock garden, my favourite stretch of sea, as I love exploring close into the reefs and going through its many narrow channels. I have travelled this way so many times in the past that I know it like the back of my hand, so don't worry about hitting the rocks below. Soon we are passing a very distinctive shaped rock which marks the entrance of Balfour's Bay, the best known sandy cove in the area. And of course the drone wanted to look at this famous landmark too.
We have liftoff. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below. And it's my delight to fly at this height, to see this wonderful sight of the land below. Land below. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below.
The bay is of course called after David Balfour, the hero of R.L. Stevenson's novel Kidnapped. David was being shipped abroad to be sold as a slave when the ship hit the Torren Rocks. He was washed ashore in this sandy cove and survived the ordeal. And although I have never been shipwrecked, I have enjoyed many nights while camping here, and you can perhaps see why. Then it was back to sea and a quick tour through Tinker's Hole, a well-known safe yacht mooring. A sight to see when the sun turns the granite walls a pure pink, although they can look a little drab on a dull day. Following a few more narrow channels and we were crossing the Sound of Iona and our start to a round of Iona. When you first see Iona from the ferry terminal at Fionport, it's hard to imagine just how rocky and remote the seaward side of the island really is. Some folks travel hundreds if not thousands of miles to see Fingal's Cave in the island of Staffa. I'd been there so often now I couldn't even be bothered zipping the extra few miles across the calm sea to see it again. However, I was not missing the opportunity to land on Elan and Rabe's lovely sands, which was a favourite spot for Scottish colourist artists Francis Cadell and Samuel Petlow to visit and paint the seascapes around this island. The views across to the wilderness coast in Mull and across to Iona were well worthy the effort of setting the drone free to have a look around.
We have liftoff. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below. And it's my delight to fly at this height, to see this wonderful sight of the land below. Land below. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below.
As we headed down the tidal Sound of Iona, I wondered if the colourist painters would have painted a seagull-eye view of the area if they had access to a drone back then. We were now passing Iona Abbey, where St Columba set up his headquarters when he brought Christianity to Scotland. It's well worth a visit, even though we passed it by this time around. Not long later, we were back in the Ross of Mull rock garden and heading back the way we had come. The sun shone briefly in the pink granite, so I decided to have one last flight with the drone to see if I could capture the beautiful green sea when the sun shines. Alas, by the time we landed, the sun had gone again.
We have liftoff.
Donny, you are the man. Play your song when you can. Some will groan and some will moan. Don't let it bother you, as it's best to be true to yourself. And there will always be someone who wants to spoil the view of your land below.
And below.
Sadly, it's just the way social media can be. So keep your drone flying high and free, and remind them it's not compulsory to watch your video, which is totally free. And it is about your view, not their view, of the land below.
And below.
So if they don't like it, tell them to hike it. But be sure to thank those that enjoy it, as they realize you are a harmless old guy, only having some fun on his way to the land below.
And below. Donny, you are the man. Flying your drone when you can. Way up high in the sky, a seagull view of the land below. Land below.
My thanks to Brian, the computer voice rapper, for some great advice. Jeff and myself then had an uneventful but very enjoyable second night camping and safe journey home the next day. I sincerely hope you've enjoyed my light-hearted view of the land below. I'm heading back to sea again tomorrow for another great adventure. Hopefully you'll come back then and watch it when it's made. Thanks for watching.